Tonight, Budd Veverka, who's going to talk to us about bears. We've had a lot of calls come in here about people sighting bears, a lot of stuff on social networks. Supervisor Greenstein's here, and I hear from him a lot when people contact him. He sends me stuff. Uh, and, uh, and so we wanted to get some information. Most of the information I get and share with people, I get from an internet search like everybody else, or from the state DEC or something. So we're very fortunate to have with us Budd Veverka, who's an expert on black bear. He's local from the Mianus River Gorge and has done a lot of studies on bears, and he's the expert who you want to hear from, not me. So I'm going to step aside, and please welcome Budd Veverka.
Hi, how you doing? So as the chief said, my name is Budd Veverka. I'm the director of land management at the Mianus River Gorge. I have a background in bears. I haven't ever gotten to really work too much as a bear biologist. But I'll show you and kind of introduce myself as we go through the video and through the presentation, and hopefully enjoy it. If you haven't, I'll give enough time for everybody to answer questions, and whatever you guys want to get out of me, I'm here to answer those for you. Okay, so first question everybody asks is, what does he know about bears? Obviously, this is not me, but this is my hero. His name is Gary Alt. He was a bear biologist in Pennsylvania. I grew up, kids were collecting baseball cards. I was collecting game magazines with all the biologists in there, and I knew all the biologists' name and everything as a kid. I was obsessed with being a biologist, and saw a presentation by him when I was 14 years old. I decided at that moment I was going to be a biologist and I was going to work on bears. So, it doesn't always work out that way. Nice thing is I've gotten a chance to spend some time with Gary over the years. I got to be with him at the Midwest Fish and Wildlife Conference in Indiana, 2015. That was a great experience. Funny thing is I got to be with him just prior to the first bear walking into the state of Indiana in 170 years. So in college, got the opportunity to go do some bear dennings in Maine. I went to Unity College in Maine, a small environmental college up there, wonderful school. But that was my first opportunity to get my hands on some bears. Then I followed up by working in West Virginia on an internship, got to trap bears, got to put some tattoos on the lips, and we tattoo the inside of the lip, same number as the ear tag. That way if the ear tags come out, we know what the bear is because he's got a tattoo. So when you're tattooing the bear, he's licking your hand, you're like, this is cool, I think. Some experience with that. Then I didn't get to do much on bears until I was in Indiana, which had no bears, and before that I was in Kentucky, which had no bears. And then a bear walked into the state. And they looked around the DNR and they said, Budd, you're the only person here who has any interest in bears whatsoever. So you're going to be the bear specialist. So the bear got on every news channel in the Chicago metro area. Of course, this is just outside in the Indiana side there where everybody drives into Chicago, kind of like where we are, driving into the city. Then, of course, I got on every station in Chicago. I had people chasing me on the street with cameras. I was like a celebrity. There were people following me around the grocery store when I was buying my bear bait. Want to know what I got for the bear and what I was going to use. Then the bear got his own Twitter feed and started kind of giving me some shade on Twitter. So here we wanted to look forward to having a few pints with Budd Veverka. That was the Hoosier Bear, at Hoosier Bear. And then we're coming on the other note, this Budd guy just loves all the press he's getting, I bet. It was enjoyable, I admit. Liked being kind of a celebrity. But again, same kind of thing. No bear had been in the state in 170 years. Everybody kind of loses their mind. People started feeding the bear because they want to see it. So really quickly, I tried to get up there and do as many educational programs as possible. Get in front of people, tell them this is what you need to do, this is what you shouldn't do. Because if you habituate this bear, he's going to start wanting to get in houses, and then we're going to have to put the bear down. The horrible thing that occurred from this all is the bear, first time he came in the state in 170 years in Indiana, but eventually he was moving back and forth between the two states. We were never going to put him down, but Michigan did. So we said we'll move him to your state, and then you can do with him what you want because he came from Michigan. Like every situation like this, politics got involved. I got a trap from Michigan, some equipment, and then the governor of Indiana made some comments about the employment in Michigan, and the Michigan governor didn't like that, and so when we had to give our equipment back, and then I had to go talk to Kentucky and hope that my governor hadn't alienated them yet and get equipment from them. So, politics step in place, but nice thing is I got to talk to a lot of people, educate a lot of people, and start actually a statewide management plan at that time. They never had any other bears, but I said they're going to be coming, and I left to come to New York, and the following year they had another bear come in right where I told them it was going to come into the state. So they're like, well, you might have known something. So for you guys, like they were in Indiana, bears really here? We've had reports and sightings over the years, but we're going to see more and more, and I'll explain why. And of course, a lot of this is social media, the Twitter feed. You guys learn a lot of this social media. I don't know if the author of Mr. Scrabbles is here tonight, but a site where everybody can kind of see what's happening with the bear, post photos. And this is great for me. I'm collecting for research projects, any photos and dates and locations to kind of track bear movement throughout Westchester County, Fairfield County, and Putnam County, New York. So I'm trying as much as possible to find out where these bears are moving. If you saw the bear and didn't know what to do, you may jump on the internet and start doing some searches. These are some common pages you'll come across. The North American Bear Center up in Minnesota. It has some facts on there, but there's facts everywhere about bears. It's really varied. The Humane Society, what to do about black bears. National Geographic Kids, 10 black bear facts. And the big thing with the Wildlife Society here is stating that this is a recent research project that's been going on, published in the Journal of, I think it's Ecological Monitoring Journal, where they actually went out and studied education programs and bear numbers and bear problem issues, and they said as people got educated, there were less bear problems, which we all kind of figured, those of us who do kind of the bear talks and bear education, but now it's actually scientifically studied. There is a significant difference in bear-related issues and problems where people know about bears. And so hopefully tonight, I'll have the opportunity to give you guys a little bit of insight into what we have, the type of bears we have here, and what our black bears are like. So, these are the 3 North American bears. And many of you could probably tell me what they are. We have the black bear, the brown bear. That one's not the white bear. That one is the polar bear. You would think, oh wait, that would be the white one. The one in the middle, the brown bear, also known as a grizzly bear. People are like, what's the difference? Well, generally, there are some biological differences. It's really about subspecies. And we always say if it's within 50 miles of the Pacific coast, it's a brown bear. If it's outside of 50 miles of the Pacific coast, it's a grizzly bear. That's kind of the demilitarized zone we use between grizzlies and brown bears. Grizzlies tending to be a little bit more aggressive, just based on the habitat they live in. But the one we're going to talk about tonight is Mr. Black Bear here. And people get an image of bears look like big, huge animals, but they're not really big. This is a stocky animal, only about 3 feet at the shoulder when it's typically walking. They don't walk on their hind legs, they walk on all fours, and only about 5 feet long from nose to tail. They do stand about 6 feet when they stand up. They do stand up. They will move a step or two, but usually they're not walking. The reason they stand up is not for aggression or anything like that, is that they're using their sense of smell. They want to get up, then they open their mouth, they let go in through their nose, and they try to scent the air and get up higher so they can get better scent. And that's the reason they stand up. The average male weighs about 300 pounds. That has gone up about 50 pounds in the last 20 years. The average female about the same, about 40 pounds in the last 20 years. So the average female is about 180 pounds. And that's really food-based is why it's gone up. These are plantigrade animals. It means they're flat-footed. That's why they can be so quiet in the woods. They've got a soft pad. They're flat foot and they can walk gently through the woods and be very silent. But being flat footed doesn't mean they can't book it. They move up to 30 miles an hour, and somebody in Ward Palm Ridge said I got chased. I says, probably not really chased, because if he wanted to catch you, he would have. It's more probably the escape routes were in the same general direction. Your escape route and the bear's escape route. And so a lot of times you spook a bear, they're going to run. It may be in the same direction you want to go. But they are extremely agile climbers. And one kid asked me, well, how quick can they climb a tree? I says, that's how quick it climbed a tree. And proficient swimmers, they've been found in freshwater, crossing large lakes, a couple miles wide. In saltwater, obviously saltwater more buoyant. They've been found out into the Gulf of Mexico, 9 miles into the Gulf, swimming. They love to swim, and they love to spend time in water. So some of you have had experience seeing this bear. It might have been wet, because they do like to go down and lay down the creek, get all wet, and then go out and wander around a little bit, and then they're nice and cool. Exceptional hearing and smell. Now everybody says, well, they got poor eyesight. Well, they don't really have poor eyesight. They have similar eyesight to dogs, or somewhere in between us and a dog. But they don't rely on it. And so if you ever concentrate on one of your senses, so if you're really concentrating on smelling something, you may not focus on anything sight-wise, and that's what happens with bears. They get so focused on listening and smelling that they kind of neglect their eyes. And this is where sometimes you'll bump into them on a trail, because they're smelling something else. They're not paying attention visually. You may be walking and not paying attention, or looking at a phone, or looking at, off to the side, and then you bump into each other. And that's typically when we have almost, I would say about 90% of bear incidences where somebody gets injured is a bump. So the one recently up in Orange County, the bear got into a garage, guy came out, startled the bear, and he got swatted, because the bear's like, what is that? I'm swatting at it. So that's how these typically occur. Hibernator, in parentheses here. Bears, for a long time, when they defined a true hibernator, was one that had its blood pressure drop, its heart rate drop, and it was almost in a state of death, close to death there, where you could pick up an animal who is in true hibernation, like a woodchuck or something like that, and it won't react, it won't do anything. It's set on a timer, and eventually it'll wake back up, and it comes out, and sorry about that. And it'll go to the bathroom and eat a little bit, and then the woodchuck will go back down and go back to sleep. Bears don't do that. So they had trouble defining what a bear was hibernation-wise. And so they, try to use the term, well, they hibernate, but they go into torpor, was the term they used. And what at that point is this bear it does lower its temperature by maybe a degree or two, but it stays pretty stable. And because its metabolism stays up, because its heart rate stays up, that's why it burns so much fat. And a bear will burn 1/3 of its body weight in a single season inside the den. It will never go to the bathroom in that 4 months it's in there. It won't eat in the 4 months it's in there. It'll lay perfectly still. And if you walk over and you peek into that den, it can be on a dead run and out of there in an instant. Every time I've looked into a den, almost every time the bear has been looking back at me. They're very aware of when you are nearby. A lot of times they'll still lay there and let you hit them with some drug and knock them out, but we always have somebody on standby with a tranquilizer gun just in case they do decide to bolt. But because that, people have tried to study bears, because bears are a large animal, difficult to study, they would love to study them about arthritis, about kidney disease, these type of things, because you don't go to the bathroom for 4 months and then get up and be fine. So it's pretty amazing what they're able to do. And so now what they call them, instead of torpor, is they call them a highly efficient hibernator, is the term. They're still working on that debate. That paper, the highly efficient hibernator, only came out a year ago, so there's still debate on what to exactly call their hibernation, but no other animal is like bears. They're the only ones that truly hibernate that way. And the last one here about bears is they are omnivorous. And omnivorous is the fact that they eat pretty much anything. And bears, I would say about 80% of their diet is vegetation. They eat a lot of grass early in the spring. They start to eat berries. In the fall, they'll eat a lot of hard mast, your acorns, your hickory nuts, beech nuts. They love beech nuts. And so that's pretty much what they eat. If they come across a dead fish or a roadkill, they'll eat it. It's about convenience for them. They'll take a lot of fawns, especially when those fawns are first born that first week. When they don't move, they're easy to walk up on and just grab them and walk away with. So they'll take a lot of fawns at that time. But they're not a big hunter. They're not going to hunt knock down deer. Because what a bear does is trying to build that weight for fall. It needs it for the winter. And so it looks at something and says, that looks like too much work. And so I always say, people are like, oh, I'm worried about my kids playing outside. You don't have to worry about your kids playing outside. Because the bear's going to look at your kids and be like, no, I'm not even having part of that. That looks like too much work. I'm just not having it. If they're noisy kids out playing in the yard, a bear is never going to come by them, guaranteed. Same as pets, where we have coyotes will occasionally take a pet or two. Bears typically don't do that. They, again, want something easy. And that's why bird feeders have become such an issue, because it's extremely easy. It's a lot of protein. All it takes is one paw to knock it down. And I've seen bears late in the season when they didn't want to burn any energy, just literally laying on the ground and pushing seed into its mouth off the ground without ever lifting its head up and just kind of shoving it into the side of its face and putting as little effort into any kind of movement as possible, because that's what they really like to do. They don't want to work for what they eat. And I was just saying, we haven't seen this one in about a week. Well, some of the nuts are starting to ripen right now. If a tree is dropping its nuts, it's just going to hang out underneath that tree. And every time the nut falls down, it'll go over and pick it up and eat it and lay back down. And it'll spend a week underneath that tree waiting for every nut to fall out of the tree. And so that may be what's happening right now. So where do bears live? Well, this is the range of the black bear. If you look at where it's black, it says that secondary range. This map is from 2014. This map needs to be updated already. In 2015, Ohio, all of its black spots they declared as primary bear range. Kentucky, all of eastern Kentucky now is primary bear range. And lots of those areas in the south are now primary bear range. Difference between secondary and primary is secondary has areas where males will create a territory and live, but females aren't there producing young. Once you find a female producing young, that's primary bear range. So that's the difference. So you have to have that reproduction occurring for that to be primary. And I will address that a little further locally here in a minute. So the typical black bear. So when settlers come to the people came to the coast, the colonists, they came to the East Coast, they looked at this bear, it was black, that's a black bear. And so that was what they named it. It should not have been named a black bear. It should have been called the American bear, because 50% of the bears west of the Mississippi look like this. These are black bears. These are brown black bears. And this is also what a lot of people will say, I saw a grizzly bear in Yellowstone, and they actually saw a brown black bear. And the way you can really tell is if you notice the ears, it's a black bear. If you didn't notice the ears and you just noticed the face, it's a grizzly bear. Because the grizzly bear's ears are almost entirely hidden. And black bears have those nice big satellite ears. And everybody's like, well, what about the hump and everything like that? Well, every time that's extremely variable. Large male black bears can kind of rough up their shoulder and look like they've got a hump. Depending on how the female sits of a grizzly bear, she may not look like she has a hump. I always say look at the ears. We move on. So we don't just have brown, we have blonde. A lot of bears in the Southwest are blonde. Everybody's like, well, because it's so hot down there, obviously you don't want to be black. But we do find some black bears in the Southwest, which is funny. We don't have any of these brown ones in the East. Like in Florida, they're all black in Florida and the South there. But you get out west, you get brown and blonde ones. But everybody's like, well, because it's cold, because it's warm. So, what about white ones? These guys are from the Pacific Northwest. So these are the commodity or spirit bear. This is not albino, this is a white black bear. And so that's what I said, black bear was not a very appropriate name to give it originally. So these guys are in the Pacific Northwest, small population, coastal islands, really cool bear. One of those ones that I just enjoy seeing. And then the last one is the one that is gonna disappear shortly. There's only maybe just over 100 of them left. And this guy is blue. This guy is called a glacier bear, which is really cool. They're silver on the outside, blue on the inner hair, and so when they move, they look iridescent. Extremely cool bear. Known as a glacier bear because this subpopulation was isolated in Alaska, coastal Alaska, by the glaciers. Well, as the glaciers have receded, black bears have been coming in, breeding with the females of these bears, and they're not producing this recessive trait at all. All the young are black. So over time, as they recede and they start breeding, that geographic barrier that creates a subspecies is gone. We're not going to have that color phase anymore. So if you want to see that one, get to southern Alaska in the next couple of years. And then, you know, bear like this, I'm able to identify this as bear from New Jersey. You can tell that because of the frosted tips and a little bit of that business in the front, party in the back. So, looking in on that kind of Jersey area and our, you know, eastern part here, you'll see those black spots, as I said before, and where that secondary range was. The bear, this is before we now have a dot in Illinois in 2014. We have two dots in Indiana in 2015 and 16. So we have every state has had a bear now in the last 10 years. Every state has had a bear, including Iowa, all these Midwest states. The only one left is Delaware. And I really can't figure that out because Pennsylvania has a lot of bears and New Jersey has a lot of bears, but I think because Delaware is so small, the bears just get through. No one ever notices, or they're just like, we don't want to notice it. It never happened. So Delaware still says they have not had a bear. But everybody else around them has. Rhode Island has a decent population of bears now. Connecticut is as well. I'll talk a little bit more about Connecticut. So why are bears showing up here? Why are they showing up? So what happened with bear populations is we cut all the forests down. A lot of people don't know. We had to reintroduce deer. We had to reintroduce geese and turkeys and all these species that we have everywhere. But we had to actually reintroduce all those because we took down all the forests and there was nothing left. The only remnant forest left was the high peaks Adirondacks, a small area in the Catskills, a small area in the Appalachians down through Pennsylvania. And this is where bears hung on and up into Maine and these areas. Well, there wasn't a lot of food there because there wasn't, I mean, we didn't want it. I mean, it wasn't good hardwoods for, you know, building or anything. We just let it go. It was rugged. And also there wasn't a lot of food. Well, bears depend on food. And so because they were pushed these areas, they were not finding a lot of food. There was higher populations than should be because they were concentrated in. And so they were only producing maybe a cub. And you had hunting there. So they were replacing themselves. So the populations were never expanding. But slowly, by surely, along the periphery of that area, bears were getting a little more food. They were getting into some hardwoods, into some hickories, into some oaks, finding an occasional orchard, building more weight. And bears have what's called delayed implantation, which means they can produce a bunch of eggs and fertilize all those eggs. And depending on how much weight she puts on is how many babies she has. And so if they're not putting on a lot of weight, they're going to have one, maybe two, sometimes none if she didn't put on enough weight in the den. But we started seeing is they started having 3 and 4. And in Pennsylvania now, that 5 is as common as 1. In just the last 3 years, they first saw the first females on camera with 6 cubs. And so because of this, as they got at those edges, because now they were producing 5 and 6 cubs, and most of them were surviving, they weren't just replacing themselves. You're also getting out to the edges of the hunting range, where less hunting was occurring. And so if they're not being replaced, and there's more of them, then they're going to start to go in what we consider exponential growth. And really, that's what we've seen. Once they got out to the edges, and they got into the foothills of Pennsylvania, into the areas of New Jersey, got down out of the mountains, where they could get more food, they exploded. And so we see that in New Jersey from 1995 here to 2000, 2008, 2014, 2017. Rapid expansion over the last 20 years because the bears are producing a lot of young.
How many was the numbers in New Jersey?
I don't know what New Jersey's bear population is right now. Yeah, I'm not sure on their numbers. I don't deal with them. Our project is in New York, and so I only know our New York and Connecticut numbers.
Different colors
What's that? So the colors right now is just the amount of expansion that occurred during that year. So what they consider the previous expansion occurred everything before 2017. You'll see the little dots up in the center there are the expansion where they had in 2017. So those areas now they consider now range, where they hadn't before. And obviously this is where they're seeing breeding females. Here is New York. In 1995, you'll see the thatched area there, the green thatching, compared to 2007. Now you say, well, it's 2007, that's a long time ago compared to what we've been seeing with these numbers. And so you see how the expansion came over, and people were pointing out to me like, well, is this kind of a land bridge here where we had these coming across from over the Catskills? And everybody's like, well, are the bears from here, from the Catskills? And I say, no, our bears have actually, these come together from this way. Our bears here are from Western Massachusetts. That's where they moved down and out of. They came down Connecticut, Connecticut. We're seeing bears that we spot on camera in northern Connecticut end up in Westchester County. So they're kind of moving in that direction. So here's looking at the two states. Now, 1995 in Connecticut, they had 4 bear reports. In 2015, I think the bear reports were 4,700. So again, a major expansion in Connecticut. New York, if you look at that map and you look where primary and secondary range is, guess where we are? We are in secondary range. That means you will have resident males who will stay in an area, and then you'll see them in the fall. Because we see transients sometime between June and August. After August, if you start seeing bears, those are ones that have typically established a territory within a decent radius. Now that's about a 35-mile territory. So if we see it here for 2 weeks, it may end up sleeping up in Ward Pound Ridge or over into, Connecticut. They have a decent range that they can move through. So we're doing a little research on that, and I just want to touch on this before we get into what to do when you guys see a bear. So our research, excuse me?
The question is, what is the bear population for New York?
I think New York's is about 8,000, and I think right now they're estimating Connecticut. Trying to remember what the numbers are for Connecticut, but I think it's about 500 for Connecticut. So, you're talking, a state like Maine has 32,000 bears. Pennsylvania has about 24,000 bears. So New Jersey, I think is somewhere they're over 10,000, I think, in New Jersey.
So are these the number of occurrences that people see bear, or just the bear population?
The estimated bear population. Now, any population is hard to estimate. Most populations are estimated based on harvest. So you base it on the amount of bears that are harvested, the rate at which people get them, and then you can determine that. Well, obviously, where you can't harvest bears are tougher. That's why Connecticut really hasn't posted anything on their specifics, but they've done enough aerial studies. They've done a couple ground studies that are trying to determine the number. And right now, we'd say about 500, but all those numbers are always rough. Anytime somebody tells you this is the population, it's pretty rough. Yes?
People are asking questions. I don't know whether I can't claim who's asking. Do you think it's one bear that we're seeing all around town, or do you think we have multiple bears?
I would say you're probably seeing one bear, but I would look at the photos. That's the biggest thing. If we get the photos in, we can start looking and seeing if it's the same bear. There's little telltale signs, and I'll get into that as we talk. So we're trying to determine, in this research, are we seeing bears that are occurrences are transient, secondary, or primary? Can we actually map sightings and movements and habitat use based on reports? And we did this in Indiana. I tracked that bear that was never radio called. We tracked it from central Michigan all the way into Indiana. I kept track of it just based on public reports of that single bear. So it can be done, and we're just trying to quantify it into a study. And then, can we effectively educate local residents to minimize negative bear interactions? And this is all part of a student study. He's a high school student at Brunswick School, He wasn't able to be here tonight, but he has been putting a lot of work into this and doing a lot of projects, setting up cameras. His name is Will Maynard, and he is part of a wildlife program that we have at Miners River Gorge, where students come in as a 10th grader, do a research project for 2 years, and then go present that at the Northeastern Natural History Conference. And so he's one of the students, and he was interested in doing bears, so we decided to do a bear project. So what we typically do is we have about 45 cameras spread out. This past year we didn't have T-Town. They changed some staff over there, so we lost those cameras. We're hoping that this year with the staff being back there, we'll get those cameras in T-Town, which would have put one camera in your general neck of the woods here, had those ones that stayed intact. But again, we do that in the spring because we're looking for transient bears as well. So the fall, we really haven't put cameras out. We've thought about it, but we just lack the staff and people to do it a lot of times in the fall. Cameras are checked every 2 weeks, April to June. And then again, we are collecting additional information the rest of the year from the public. And that's really a big chunk of our study. These are all the partners involved, quite a few of them. Campfire Club of America is is a donor. They actually provide some money. So just go through some of the bears we've seen. A lot of these are in Putnam County. I'll mention if there's a Westchester County one or some in over in Reading, Connecticut. These are both Putnam County bears. That one, you can tell on the bear. So the first one's a transient bear, very small bear. This one's more mature, but you can see it's got that white on the neck. About 25% of bears have that with chest blades, which is a really good definer. So if I can look at that and see that on a picture, I know where that bear is moving. Or we may get a bear that has an ear tag, which is like Yahtzee, and then I can really track it because people could tell me they saw the ear tag, what number it was, and know where it's showing up. And that's a big male. So you've got a young male, you've got a female in the middle, you've got a big male. The only reason we know that as a female is because she has some cubs with her, or I wouldn't be able to tell. But these large males, you can tell them. They've got a certain look about them. So this bear here, this is a Westchester County bear. He was very curious and pulled down that tree. He's actually got a little video clip of him at the end. So, and then that's a nice bear in Reading, Connecticut. Really nice bear. And there's a female with cubs. That's a different female from the other. The one camera up in Putnam County, we had 11 bears last year on that camera, including 2 females with 3 cubs each. We could tell that because one female had no chest blades, the other had chest blades. So quite a few bears on the camera. This year, that camera had 0 bears. So you never know. Time to time, they started doing a little bit of habitat management there, and I think it moved the bears around. 2018 bears. Again, trying to think of where that bear was at there. I think that one might be, yeah, it's a Reading bear. And that is a Reading bear. No, that's Putnam County bear. That's the Volkswagen. We call him the Volkswagen because he's huge. He actually stands up and his head's outside of the screen. So where I said about 6 foot, black bears, large, mature males can get to be over 7 foot. He's over 7 foot. He is a monster of a bear. I estimate him, it's hard to estimate weight, I estimate him, this is April. I think he's probably somewhere around 400 pounds in April, which means he's going to be over 500 come fall. They have harvested bears well over 600 and up to 800 pounds. So typically not the bears we see down here. You're going to see those up in the primary range. Another young male, kind of a more scruffy one. You see each bear kind of has a different look to them. Some look real smooth, some look like this. Another young male. So different from the first one, but again, it's a this is a transient bear. Very young, skinny bear, maybe 1 to 2 years old. And then of course, we get the female with her cubs. This is great when we are able to get first year cubs. Right there, they're about 10 to 15 pounds, those little guys. And very curious and love to play. I got about 120 photos of that series right there of her and them playing. And another female with cubs. So that one had 3, this female here had 2 cubs. They occurred about the same time in different cameras, so we figure they're different bears then. You do some assumption. Public reports, we've got Pound Ridge, Reading. This guy, the picture of this one, that guy's actually a polar bear biologist. And he comes home and the black bears are eating his stuff off his porch. So this one is one of our pictures from here. This one's an ear tag. This is ear tagged bear. This is the same bear we caught on camera and got him up in Putnam County, all the way at Great Hollow Preserve, almost in Pawlings. And then this was in southern Reading, Connecticut. And so 3 months later, so he had moved, and he pulled one of his ear tags out. So we don't know if he has any ear tags by now, but. And then this bear was one last year near Ward Pound Ridge, and if you look at the date, that's 11/26. So that's Thanksgiving time. That bear is ready to den at any point. So you know that that bear is not going to move far away. It's going to den somewhere in that general area of Ward Pound Ridge. So I always say, what do I do if I see a bear and the bear is in the woods and he's doing bear things? I always say, congratulations, you got to see a bear. Even that occurrence is a rare thing. Observe from a distance. If he's moving perpendicular to you, let him go. You don't have to yell at him. You don't have to do anything. He's being a normal bear in the woods. You're hiking, you saw him, great. If he's in the woods and he's not working perpendicular and he's walking towards you down the trail, that's when you need to let him know that you're there. Again, they may be focused on something entirely different. He may not be coming at you. People are like, he's coming at me. He may be walking your way. And that's really all it is. And you just need to make that bear aware that you're there. And a lot of people are like, why run on the trails? I recommend if you run on the trails because you're moving a little quicker, to carry a bell. Have a bell on your shoelace, on your backpack, or your water pack, or whatever. If you make a little bit of a dinging sound, they have such good hearing that you'll never see the bear then. They'll step off the trail and get out of the way and be gone before you ever get there. If you're walking really quietly in the woods, that's usually when you'll come across the bear. But always be conscious, always be aware. Even if you're running, keep your eyes ahead of you, down the trail. Make sure there's nothing on the trail ahead of you that is going to cause an issue. For a bear, if you see him on the trail, he's coming your way, you're going to want to stand your ground. Never move forward. Always stand your ground. And in a firm, you don't have to scream, in a firm voice, say, hey, bear, hey, hey. You don't have to really get loud. You say, hey. Because if you scream, that's going to scare that bear, and he may run right at you scared. You want to alert him, and if he sees you, he may move off. Now, if again, his escape route may be behind you, though. And this is where people sometimes like, well, he kept moving towards me. Well, he now is aware of you, or he doesn't care, one of the two. In that moment, I always tell people, as you're yelling at him, and again, you also want to maybe, if you have a jacket, open it up, make yourself big, raise your arms, make yourself look big, continue to do a little, hey, hey bear, come on, hey. You're just kind of giving him a yell, letting him know you're there. He's still walking your way. He may have glanced up at this point. If he's still walking your way, he has a destination in mind, and it's not involving you. So at this point, I always tell people, as you're backing up a little bit, back off the trail. Because if you're, a lot of trails around here, you notice sides are all barberry. The only place he may want to walk, and again, they are lazy. They don't want to go through the woods where it's rough. They're going to take the nice, easy path because they don't want to burn any calories. So because they don't want to burn any calories, they're going to come right up this aisle, right down the middle. You just need to get off to the side and back away and let him pass by. And that's what will occur. I mean, that is it. Now, if you back off the trail, and the bear's walking down the trail, and as you back off the trail, he decides to turn off the trail and come towards you then. This is when I always tell people, that's the point where he's now wanting something from you. This bear has been habituated. So somebody's fed him, he's got something from somebody one time, so he needs a lesson, like anything. So you're going to continue to yell, find a rock, a stick, anything nearby, and chuck it at him. Once he feels that one thing, that's all it takes. Small rock, one little stick, that's all I've had to do when I've had them. And it'll make them aware, like, okay, fine, and walk off. That's typically what you're going to do. So, can't climb a tree with a black bear, can't jump in a lake with a black bear. That's to stand your ground and yell at them. Eventually, they're going to think, I don't want to fool with whatever this is because it's loud, it's big, and I don't want to burn these calories. And it's going to walk away. But you need to make sure that you are strong enough to stand your ground and not run. Because the minute you turn and run, that's when a bear decides, oh, it's playtime. Or they get that predator like you do with a dog. The kids are playing with the dog and then they turn and run and the dog chases them. it's this almost ingrained predator prey kind of game that they played, and they do it as cubs, and they grow up with that. Is I'm going to chase whatever is in front of me, and I'm going to knock it down and play. Well, they don't realize that they're going to play, or they're going to do some damage, because they're a big animal and they've got large claws. And so that's the key, is to stand your ground, yell at them, make yourself look big, throw a couple things at them, and really be aggressive the more they come toward you. A bear getting really close to you is extremely rare. So I'm going through the progression of what would be more and more rare for it to occur. So this is an extreme area where that would happen, where the bear would get that close to you. I've talked to dozens upon dozens of people who encounter bears in the woods. Bear was coming down the trail, they yelled, the bear turned and walked off the trail. Or they yelled, shouted, "Bear!" and the bear turned and ran the other way. That's typical bear behavior. Everything I've seen from the bear you guys have here is it is a good bear. It still has typical bear behavior. People have yelled at it, it runs off. Somebody shows up, it runs off. That's what you want a bear to do. So, next step, which I do if I see a bear and the bear is in my yard. Same exact thing. Bears walk through the yard, just let it go. Now, if you've taken the precautions that I'm going to educate you on, he should just walk through your yard because there's nothing to find. So I always tell people the best way to minimize a bear encounter is to prevent a bear encounter. And to do that, you want to eliminate the attractants that bring a bear to your yard. So you're going to eliminate things like a bird feeder. Everybody's like, well, I love to feed the birds. Well, feed the birds when you need to feed the birds. Well, I always recommend December 1st, put your bird feeder up. April 1st, take it down. The birds don't need the seed anymore. A lot of those seed birds have now moved south and are doing completely different things, or have moved further north and gotten out of here. So you're going to have these birds where you don't need to feed them anymore. It's summertime. They don't need to be helped. If you do feed, some people like to do the jellies, the peanut butters, the peanuts, these type of things that are more summer birds, orioles and that. I always tell people, go ahead and suspend a line and be creative on this. And this is what typically we do in bear country is you put a line up with a couple pulleys, you hook it to a tree. You're gonna hook your feeders from that and make sure they're 7 feet off the ground. If they're 7 feet off the ground, the bear can just touch the bottom, he's not gonna get much out of it. And he'll move on. It's too much effort, too much work going for that. He wants that one that's right here, we can knock the pole over and lay down and eat it. So if you get it up 7 foot high on a suspended line and keep the ground cleaned up underneath, the bear will scent it and move on out of your yard. Garbage, keep your garbage inside, locked up, where it's not going to be an issue, and only put it out that morning. Don't feed pets outside. That's a huge one. If you put the cat food out there, bears love cat food. Bears love dog food. Again, they eat anything. They're omnivorous. So you put that food out for the cat, the bear's going to eat it. So I always say, if you got an outdoor cat, feed it, bring the food right back in. Eventually, if he's not out there to eat it when you want to eat it, he'll be hungry enough, he'll come up to the house and want it. So you always make sure that you only put it out when it needs to be outside. Grills, a big one is grills. People will forget that there's a grease tray in the bottom of your grill. I've seen a bear completely disassemble a grill down to like fragmental pieces to get to the grease tray and pull that out of there. So grills are a big one. Keep your grill cleaned and store it inside. Store it in the garage. Store it up really close to the house if you can. So if you have a deck, against the house as opposed to against the outside of the deck. It just minimizes scent. If you can go inside though. Because even on the porch, that's when we start to see issues. If your scents are still there, if you just pull them closer to the house, and the bear's gonna come closer to the house then. Again, feeders, garbage, grills, all these things. If you took the precaution and the bear walked through your yard, that was great. Now, the bear is now eating your feeder. I know everybody wants to get the photo. Take the photo and then yell at the bear. He needs to know that what he's doing is a bad behavior. And what happens a lot of times, and you can watch videos online, where a bear and 5 cubs played in a pool all day. And the people stood inside and watched it. And then the bears walked away. No repercussions for their actions. Like your kids. If you let them do anything and never reprimand them, they're going to do anything. So you have to teach them this is not a good behavior. Again, from the safety of your house, yelling at the bear first. You You can flip lights on and off. Anything you can do to kind of scare the bear. Yelling, yelling's the biggest thing. If he doesn't react to yelling, he's hearing a lot of yelling. I tell people, one great thing to go get 2 metal pans and just bang them as hard, open the sliding door, keep the screen closed, but just smash them as hard as you can together. That metal sound is something they don't hear very often. And every time I've seen it used, the bear takes off like a shot. If the bear continues to hang around after you've tried to do that, this is when I start to say, then you need to call in a professional. This is when you call the conservation officer. They're trained on what to do. In this situation, I tend to stay away from local PD and call a conservation officer because he's not causing any issue to the house itself. Feeder, something else that's outside, it's all away from the house. Once he comes, this happens, and if you don't have a guard cat like this one. Now what I say about bears not liking conflict. He's like, oh, okay, I've had it, okay. That's pretty typical. I've seen cats outside stare down bears and the bears run off. And the cat was outside and the cat was like, and the bear was like, no, I'm done. So if the bear starts getting up on the porch, this is when on the porch, looking in the windows, this means this bear's more habituated, more used to people. He's not afraid anymore. This is when local PD, this is when you contact local PD because they can show up. They have at least the background and methods. They have a sidearm if it has to be used. But they're going to be much better off to try to haze that bear out of there. Some agencies that are in bear country do keep a lot of riot-type gear around, and that's what we use on bears. You take a beanbag round and you shoot them in the rear end with it, a rubber bullet, pepper spray. These are things that are hazing to bears to mean what you're doing is bad, and we want you to be a good bear, so here's a little bit of pain or a little something that you don't like to make you not do this again. And we've seen bears are extremely smart. They get that a couple times, they learn. And we've seen bears go completely back to staying away from people, especially when they've gotten hit with a few of those things. One of the things they're now doing when they're capturing bears is if they have to go in and they actually have to capture a bear, remove it, take it out, is they give it a big spoonful of ipecac before they wake it up from the drugs. That way, not only does the bear wake up, he's now got ear tags, he's had a tattoo put on his lip, but now he's throwing up too. So the whole situation for him was bad, but we didn't have to go to the point where we had to put that animal down. And that's the idea of hazing, is a little bit of pain over death. Because the situation progresses, and we go to a situation like this, where a bear gets into a house. This is a dangerous situation. And virtually any situation where a bear ends up inside a house, that bear ends up dead. Because even if he gets back out, at this point, he's now a danger to be inside somebody else's house. And typically that's when the law enforcement officer, local law enforcement officers or the conservation officers step in and take this bear down. So any step that we can do back at those beginning levels, where we can haze those bears when they're either walking towards us or they're in our yards, hanging out, and we can yell at them or we can get them scared, that's what we want to do. We don't want to ever get to these last 2 steps where they start getting on. This is what happened we were fine with them hitting an occasional bird feeder. People go out and scare it. People started feeding the bear in Indiana. And then when I got my trap and started trap this bear was the same day that it got on a porch and tried to not get it, banged on a door and knocked down the table on the porch. I went and got the trap, we started to trap the bear. So eventually we had an issue with the trap. I caught the bear in 2 nights. The bear decided to open the trap and walk right out because somebody didn't build the trap well enough. So I gave Michigan a lot of issues about that. They're like, well, we let you borrow our trap. I'm like, you gave me a tunnel, not a trap. So when the bear got out from that, it was very hard to catch him again. And at that point, we moved to a different style trap. We tried a lot of other methods, but he moved back. He never patterned himself again. He learned from that. He got trapped. He never stayed in the same pattern again. He moved back and forth between Michigan and us. Eventually went to den, and when he came out in the den, he got on a porch first thing in April, and that's when the officer stepped in and took him out. So again, these are the situations we want to avoid where we can live with bears. So if you have an issue, obviously local PD, if you feel more comfortable, just call the local police. if you don't want to, look up the numbers, anything like that, the bear is close to the house. I always say if it's just in your yard, don't bother with it. I mean, he's just coming through. He's not a danger. He's moving from one place to another. He's normal bear behavior. Once he starts to cause damage, then you can start to contact some folks. And that's what we say. When he causes damage, contact a conservation officer, say he knocked out my feeder and then he moved on. If he's on your porch, call the police, get them over there, then they can contact the DEC, get them involved, and they can monitor the situation, see what's happening at that point. They'll see, oh, let's step in. It depends on the time of year. Let's come down and actually capture this bear, or we need to put this bear down. Those are the type of situations we run into. This bear, from everything I've seen from all the photos, he will hit a feeder, but if you yell at him, he takes off. And that's what I've seen from what I've heard from folks. That sounds like a normal, good bear still, and that's what we want. But if he's hitting feeders, everybody around the neighborhood should be taking their feeders in, getting him out of there, so that he doesn't have those things to go after. And the more we eliminate it, the more chance he's going to be like, there's nothing really here, I'm going to move on, I'm going to go back to eating acorns and hickory nuts and this type of thing. So take those steps. You see a bear in the area, go out and get your feeder and bring it in. Put the grill in the garage, keep your garbage in, and those little steps are all it takes to prevent a bear from having to be put down. These are the numbers here. The top one is just sightings. So if you cite it, Matt Merchant at Region 3 loves to get those sightings. He's been providing sightings down to me. So for our study, we've been providing sightings to him, working together. The next one down, possible danger. This is if that bear is on the door, knocking on the door. He's trying to get into the house. We had a situation up in Michigan. Bear got up on the porch, and there's a video on Facebook of this. The bear was on the porch at his grill. This was about 10:30 at night. He was making some late night steaks. At a grill, the guy yells at the bear. The bear turns around and steps off one step of the porch and turns right back around and comes right back to the door. Now he's yelling at the bear through the glass door. Get out of here, bear. He's yelling at it. His buddies actually made shirts that said, get out of here, bear, with his face on it. Because they just were ripping on him. He's like, get out of here, bear, get out of here. And that bear wasn't doing anything. And it stood up at the door. He's yelling at it through the door. He's beating on the door, and the bear is at the door. And then the bear looks down, and I have a video of this, and he puts his claws on the door handle and starts pulling the sliding glass door open. So the guy's now holding the sliding glass door closed, trying to get the lock closed on it. Then the bear, because the guy's holding it, kind of looks up at the guy, and then he puts his mouth down. He puts his mouth on the corner of it. He actually chewed the corner of the door, trying to get it open while that guy is inside. That was at the point where we knew this bear had to go. But again, those are the situations that you want to try to avoid. And if that situation is happening, obviously you want to call law enforcement.
What happened there? Like, how did that end?
How'd that end? Well, he wandered off that night.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he got it closed, locked. The bear eventually got frustrated and went away. It knocked the grill over, ate the grease tray, and then took off. And typically what happens is the bear got left about 10 minutes before the police got there. I don't know how they have sense about it, but they know. It always seems to happen. It's like the officer got here, the bear was already gone. And so that situation, we knew the bear had to go, but he never patterned. That was in that point where he wasn't patterning himself. And again, April came back out of the den, and they took him out. We want to know any encounter, whether you saw it in the woods, on a trail, whether you walked through your yard, or if it took out a bird feeder, or if it was on your porch. It helps us. We can communicate with anybody as well and make sure that the situation has the best ending possible. And that's really what we want to happen. We don't have hunting around here for bears. I mean, bear season is legal in Westchester County, but where are you going to hunt them at? And most bear hunters don't want to hunt here. The chance of getting that one bear who's wandering through is not high, so they're going to go up to Sullivan County, places where there's a lot higher bear density, and they're not going to hang around in this area trying to hunt a bear. So it's not going to happen in this area. So with us, we have to learn to live with bears and be able to eliminate these attractants to make sure that bears can survive and we can survive and we all get along. And it works well in a lot of places. Some other options here, iNaturalist, Hudson Housatonic Bears. If you look on it, go on the iNaturalist app, you put in Hudson Housatonic Bears, you can actually go on there and post anything that you've got, photo, pictures, to see where some of the other sightings are. This is a very nice citizen science site. If you want to participate, we love it. I See Mammals app, I worked with Kat Sun out of Cornell. She developed this app. Right now it's for bears, but they plan to do other large mammals at some point. That information was all gathered, and Kat gets that information back to me too. Really nice little website, and you're able to track any hikes you go on too, so they want to know if you haven't seen a bear. So if you take a hike, you can do a hiker thing on that and do a hike and say, I didn't see a bear. It's kind of that presence absence. Absence is just as important as when you see something. So, community-wise, in your town, if you want to get more bear prepared, and you know we're on the edge of bear country. Probably 10 to 15 years from now, we will be bear country. There will be established females breeding here. I have rarely been wrong on this. We're going to be having cubs in this area, and we're going to be bear country. And so preparing now for that occurrence is important. Education, knowing what to do, and just making sure that we can live with bears. This is Whistler in British Columbia, and this is where they developed this program at. But a lot of the pieces are marketed, have Whistler on them, but they do put a lot of stuff out there for the general public. They've got coloring guides for kids, all kinds of great information on this website. Get Bear Smart Society put it together. Wonderful page. They have everything from stuff that you can do as a resident to the town. I posted one back here is actually a template for putting in regulations and rules for people taking their bird feeders down and cleaning up and being bear smart. So lots and lots of information on this website. Great page. Here's one of the things that they use is if they've had a bear sighting in the area, they just use these little trifolds. They go set it up nearby to say there's been a sighting in the area, and just some of the normal, what do you see if you see a bear? Stand your ground, yell at the, speak in a firm voice, make yourself look big, don't approach the bear, don't feed the bear. Go on there. There's 2 great videos on that Get Bear Smart. One's a really funny little video. It's kind of set with a silent film type of thing. And they have this little couple and a guy dressed as a bear, and he keeps stealing things. Talking about what to do in those areas and what the precautions to take. The other one talks about the Bear Society, really gives you the information about why they put this together, what they're doing in that area, and why they're trying to put it out to other communities to be bear smart. And I want to leave lots of time for questions, so we have a good half hour. We're going to go over anything I missed, and just answer anything you may have.
I'm going around. I'll do you first, and I'll get back there at the mic.
3-part question, not related. How about air horns?
Air horns, wonderful. Wonderful to use. If you have an air horn, any noisemaker, something that they're not used to hearing. A lot of bears, especially if they spend a little bit of time in neighborhoods, are going to be used to yelling, are going to be used to dogs barking. Anything different from that, an air horn, a whistle, pans banging, those are going to scare that bear because it's something they're not used to seeing. Yes, continue.
You said to keep the ground under a bird feeder.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard in January to do that. So.
With January, you don't have to worry about doing that.
Oh, you don't think so, huh?
No, bears are going to be in the. I said put your bird feeder up December 1st. Take it down April 1st. After that, if you have your bird feeder up after April 1st, is when you want to make sure you suspend it. When they're in the den, we're safe to feed birds. So that's the nice thing. We do get a period when we shouldn't have to really worry about bears. Now this year we did have a few bears come out in February,
Yeah.
and they hit a feeder or 2. But I tell people generally, you're safe April 1st. Nice thing is they're going to hit 1 feeder that might be out. It's cold. A lot of times they're still very lethargic. They'll head back in, especially when we got March the way we got. So some of those bears decided, okay, this is enough, and we started getting all the storms in March and actually headed back into the dens. They don't get really going metabolism-wise until mid-April. Really start feeding. Early on, they feed very lightly, so they may hit a feeder, but they will move on. They aren't going to really habituate themselves early on like that.
I can tell you that we've had bears in our backyard during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the other, last question is, how about a compost pile?
Yeah, I get the same question a lot on compost. A lot of times you don't notice if the bear has done anything to your compost because it's compost. You know, it turns it up and eats stuff out of it. If you're gonna have a compost, I always say have one of the ones that's mesh, where you can have a lid down on it and you can lock it. Those are always the best ones anyhow. You can open it up, put your compost in, turn it, get stuff out of it, but it closes that top off. Or the biggest thing is when you put your stuff in there, give it a quick turn so at least there's a layer over top of that compost. It's not sitting right on top. Most of the time the coons and everything get that before the bears ever get to it anyhow.
Hello, I've never seen a bear, but I've taken pictures of evidence of bears twice. Once was last week, and the other was when the blueberry bush is blooming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do I need cement posts and a chain link fence around my blueberry bush? It's as big as a bear, and I haven't had a blueberry in years.
For things like blueberry bushes, fruit trees, Whistler will tell you just remove them, but we don't need to worry about that. We don't have enough bears to have that issue. So for me, the biggest thing for if you're having fruit trees or something like that is you could put any kind of net over them. Anything that's gonna, like the same net you use for the birds will work for bears. He'll come along and be like, he might poke at it, tear a little bit. He's not gonna try and pull the whole thing off. There's gonna be easier meal the next house down or the next, hill over. They may check it out, that kind of thing, and move, again, as little energy as possible. He wants to come out and just reach up there and just start picking them off with his mouth. He wants that easy meal. If he continues at it, the net didn't work, he tears the net up. I tell people, if you've got a little orchard or you got a little area, learn about electric fences. That's the best thing to use. And it's specialized. You can put up for a short period of time. They make short little mobile ones. They're small. You put it up. You have those little either plug-in ones, or you have a little solar panel. You can use it for about a month until the fruiting's done. Take it back down, put it away. We use them at a lot of the apiaries. Use them because the bees, they'll come in and take out the hives. And so I recommend when everybody has an apiary, put some electric around it. That's the best thing.
How tall?
What's that?
How tall?
I wish I'd had my guide with me. It didn't print off right. I actually have a guide on, and there's actually a guide on that Get Bear Smart, a guide for using electric fences to deter bears. It's the exact name of the guide. Because it has certain strands you want to use. You don't have to be real tall. Again, remember they're only 3 foot tall, and they're not going to climb over electric. So it only has to be 36 inches, or even.
One more question. They'll take out a fawn lying there, not moving.
Yes.
How about a little old lady who's weeping her garden?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. Again, we're talking a fawn is this big and laying perfectly still. Any person, they have an inane kind of like, people are bad, this is not a thing I want to deal with. Bears, we have lots of bears around, and you see all the photos I've gotten that we never see. We get the occasional bear who decides, I'm going to hit a few houses, and then starts getting on camera. Gets a few bird feeders, and then like, okay, I like this. If we start taking those things down, he moves back to the woods, then we don't see him again. They don't typically like to be around people. If you're outside, you're concerned, I always say, make a little noise. Sing while you work. If you're silent, that's when he stumbles across you. And I said, most of the situations when you're silent, and the bear's coming up, you jump up and yell, and the bear's like, ah, and he goes like that. He's like, get away, but he's got claws sticking out there, and that's what happens. There, you saw the bear with the cat. His reaction is like, what? But an easy reaction for him is also put up his paws and do this. So those are the kind of things. Just make a little general noise when you're out there. I always tell people if you like having a little bell or something like that, a bell on the zipper, you make a little bit of noise, almost like a dog leash, or a dog collar. You make a little jingle all the time. It's good.
Has there been any incidents of bears getting rabies?
Bears do not get rabies. It's one of those other things they've studied. Very few of the distemper, rabies, bears do not get it.
I just had two questions. One, is there any sense that they don't like? Any particular sense that would distract them, or they'll just about
Sense
eat?
that they don't
Like if you sprayed something out, will they? Like with deer, we have deer scent that sort of deters.
I mean, they don't particularly like a lot of human scent.
Okay.
And so, if you have an really old shirt and you want to sweat in a bunch, just hang it out there, post, work all day in it and then just hang it out on the fence post or something like that, or just, they don't care for human scents. So a lot of people will do, I've seen areas where they take old shoes, and I see us out west with coyotes, keeping them away, is they'll take their old boots and they put them on the fence posts.
Huh.
You hang the shoes and the boots on the fence posts, that human scent keeps things away.
And
May I answer you? My brother lives in South Lake Tahoe, and they spray ammonia
Mm-hmm.
all over the porches
oh wow.
and the garbage, and the bears hate the ammonia.
Yeah. Only thing with that is then everything smells like ammonia. So I'm trying to keep it minimal there. The biggest thing is what the bears are not attracted to, but what the bears are attracted to. So eliminate those other scents, fruit smells, those type of things.
And just one last one. A lot of people like to put out hummingbird feeders.
Mhm.
Are they going to go for those?
I've got a little cartoon of these little bears with little wings that are hummingbird feeders. They like hummingbird feeders. Suspend your hummingbird feeder. That's the best thing to do. The hummingbirds prefer that anyhow. They like being up and can go to it. You can still watch them really well. And I always say to people, if you don't want to hang it on a line, put on a post that hangs out off your deck, and then hang it from that. It's a hard one for the bears to get to, and usually it's not strong in a scent for them to really care about.
Question over here.
So you said that we're in secondary
Yes.
bear range?
Yes.
But then how did you get the photos of the bears with cubs?
So those bears are actually from Putnam County. So our study is Putnam, Westchester, and Fairfield County. And right now, all the bears we've seen, so this is where we're defining this line, is all the bears we've seen with cubs are in Putnam County. So the idea right now is we do one more year of study. We'll see if we have any of those bears with females with cubs in Westchester. We're not going to do a study for 5 years, then 5 years from now we'll do it again. And then we'll see where that line is at again. So at this point, then we'll be able to say, okay, now we do have bears at Ward Pound Ridge with cubs, or we have them at, Kitchewan Preserve, or whatever, wherever. That way, we'll be able to kind of tell this line of where we have this primary range. And it's just more education, because when you have younger bears in an area, you have bears that tend to get more in trouble. So the transient bear, these are typically young males, and I get to talk a lot on this earlier. They leave the female because they're afraid of the adult males, because the adult males will kill them to breed with those females. So they get out of town. And I always tell you they kind of do a walkabout. And just like any teenage boy, they get themselves in a lot of trouble. The girls tend to stay closer to mom, they stay in the general area. The males can wander, in a single jaunt can go 100 miles. The bear that was in Indiana was a young male. He moved 225 miles from where we originally found him. So they can move these great distances, and they get into trouble because they don't know any better. And so when the ones you see in town, when they're treed, like the one I had on there in the picture, the little face in the tree, young male bear, got into town, didn't know what to do, got up in a tree, and then we come in, trank it, take it out of town, and get it back to a safe place. These young transients, they'll wander through, they'll get themselves in trouble, and then they usually wander back closer to home. The ones we're starting to deal with are these more mature males that establish territory, and now they're like, these are all the houses in my area, I know all the places that have a bird feeder, and those are the ones that can eventually be an issue, because it's not so much that they're the dumb little ones, now they're the smart big ones, and they start to figure things out. I've gotten food here in the past, I'll go back there. I had one place, so the bear I was dealing with was a 4-year-old male, so it wasn't a 2-year-old male. The 4-year-old male, he would go back to the same guy's yard, sometimes multiple times a day, because the guy kept putting his bird feeders back up. I talked to the gentleman multiple times, say, come to the bear talk, we want you to live with bears. He says, I want to live without bears. He's like, I just want you to get rid of the bear. But he kept and his neighbor next door never saw the bear. He saw the bear, I think 11 times the bear was in his yard. His neighbor never saw it, because his neighbor didn't have his feeders out, didn't have his trash out, anything like that. So if you take those, first time it happens, I tell people, oh, the bear docked him up here. Get everything inside. Don't put it up for a while. Let the bear move on. And usually they do. So a lot of people we had a place, the guy had an apiary. Bear hit it the first time. Well, he got some media coverage from that. People wanted his honey. This was bear-approved honey. So then I went to his house the one time we were trying to set up a camera. I found empty fluff containers, empty peanut butter containers, where he's putting them out behind the house to keep the bear coming back so that he'd get more pictures of the bear for his website to say this is bear-approved honey so he could sell more honey. Those are the kind of situations we were dealing with.
Okay, so do you recommend the bear pepper spray? And if so, do you recommend this? Is the small one okay? And the other question is, do you need a class to train yourself on that?
I've handled over 20 bears. I've never used pepper spray or had anything with me. I've always used my voice and my arms. The one time I was holding a cub who had gotten its head stuck in a trap, and so I'm holding it because we had to tranquilize it because then we had to like pull the trap apart. And the mama come down and she wasn't real happy with me. And she charged me, and this is my bear defense tactic. Ah! Ah! That's exactly what I did. She stopped. She huffed at me, she stomped her feet, she snapped her jaw a little bit, and then she walked away. They don't want to be confronted. I'm holding her cub. It's going "Rah!" and crying, and she stopped short of me. It was a mock charge. So, I've never had to use it. Typically, we always recommend it is out west, because not only are grizzlies out there, but black bears, because they compete with grizzlies and other large carnivores, tend to be more aggressive in the west. And so when you see reports of people being injured or killed, almost all of those occur out west.
If you walk in the woods with your dog off leash, what kinds of interactions can you expect from a dog and a bear?
I really recommend on leash in the woods when we have a bear, particularly when we have no bears in the area. If we haven't had a sighting lately, it's a little bit better. I always recommend on leash. Not only them, bobcats are becoming more common, and bobcat can really tear up a dog pretty good. But with bears is what we see the issue is. The bear stands his ground, the dog runs to him, and the bear defends himself. Almost always. We rarely ever see somebody with a dog on a leash where the bear comes to the dog. It's always the dog going to the bear and then getting killed or injured.
How old is Scrabble?
Scrabble, from the pictures looking at it, it's looks like it's a bear somewhere between ages of 4 and 6. Or 3, maybe 3. He looks like a decent sized bear. Usually at 1 to 2, they look really scrawny. They look really thin, really gangly. This bear, they look like that bear. That's a 2-year-old bear. They get a little older than that. 4 is when they start to look like a bear, not like a dog. So he's in that range. They don't reach maturity until after 6. Bears become mature at 7 when they want to breed. So even if they establish a territory here from 4 to 6, usually by the time they get to 7, now they want females, they'll adjust their territory back to find a female. And so their territory will shift further back into the primary range at that point. Then they can also compete with those other males that were in that area.
Does he have a white nose?
I haven't gotten to see the photos good enough to tell. Let's see, that one was him right there. Doesn't seem to be. What I tend to look at is the bridge of the nose. So if you see this bear here, there's a big difference here. This guy has a really dark muzzle. It's a very dark bridge of that muzzle. I see a lot of bears will be much lighter than that. This bear possibly could be the same bear. This bear was in Pound Ridge all last season, really enjoying a lot of bird feeders, going into, drinking out of the fountains and everything like that. These folks here that were in this yard, they took about 60 photos. Never yelled at the bear or scared it off, just let it do its thing. So I've seen this one here. It does have a dark muzzle. It's possible it's the same bear. And that would put it within its territorial range.
I don't understand what we're supposed to do about our garbage. I can't quite figure it. Are we supposed to get armored garbage pails? What do you do if your garbage pail's out all day?
If you've got the one that the lid comes down over, like kind of latches down like this, that's the best ones to have. Because they usually almost always have a little spot at the end where it looks like you put a lock in it. And I tell people just put a hasp on it. If he lifts it up a couple times, can't get into it, he's going to move on.
But what is the garbage man supposed to do?
Well, it's unlocked. It's just a hasp. So it's just a small hasp or like a carabiner, something like that. You just slide through. It's not a lock. So you just put that to close it
Do they
off.
sell these?
Yeah, anywhere you can get just a little carabiner, a little hasp to put on there, just to attach to keep that lid down. If not, if you've got one that the lid pops straight off of and easy to come off of, you may already have. If you have raccoon issues, you can have bear issues. So if raccoons getting your garbage, bears are getting your garbage. If raccoons aren't getting your garbage, it's likely the bears aren't going to get in your garbage. I've seen raccoons follow bears around because they're like, that's just the big one of us, but he can knock stuff down, I can't. But the easy garbage cans are going to be the easy garbage cans for anything. If you have the lids that come down, that's great. Use a little hook on them. Your garbage day, take the hook off and move it up the end of the driveway. Or move it to wherever you move your garbage at that day. If it's got to sit outside. Mine sit outside. I don't have a place in my garage to sit them, but I keep them closed. I've had a bear in my backyard before. I haven't got to see him because he moved through because I follow all my rules. I never get to see any of my bears that are in my neighborhood, so I said maybe I should put a feeder out or cook some bacon in the yard.
What time are babies coming?
Was that?
What time are the baby bear coming?
So the babies are born in January. So we always say that bears the females have to be in the den by January. Because sometimes it will be pretty warm. They have to be in the den by January to have babies. And so I always say definitely January 1st to March 1st, bears are in the den. December and April March are variable as to whether they stay in the den. Every now and then we get a male who early rise, he'll come out in February. A lot of times he went in early. So if he went in early, he may come out early. If he went in late, he may stay in a little later. And a lot of it's not so much weather dependent, but it's really what they feel like was on the ground. So if we get snow cover, or if a lot of the food source get eaten off, or if we didn't have a great mast year, then they're going to go in earlier. It's not so much that it has to be wicked cold, or like a better winter for them to go in. They go to den in Florida. Some don't if they have food available. If the food's not available, they'll den. And of course, all the females den down there.
So just to build on that last question, so during what period of time are the females pregnant? Like someone was thinking that the bear that we were seeing was a pregnant female. Was that the right time of year to see it?
So she will get pregnant in June. June is their breeding period. That's why the young males take off 1st of June. June, early July is their breeding period. They breed, then we have that period of everything's done, it just hasn't implanted until she builds that weight. And then they implant late, they have the babies. The cubs when they come out are extremely small, maybe about this size. Very tiny, they crawl up on their own, they start to feed, and then they grow in the den. And so, Gary was one of the first ones to go into the den and actually film these bears at that small size in January, February. He went into every week throughout the season. He has footage from every week occurring of young being born. Lynn Rogers followed up, and you can go to Lynn Rogers' website. He does that as well. The issue I have with Lynn Rogers is that he habituates bears to be in there with them. What Gary did was he went to different bear sites and tranquilized the bears at different times of the different weeks, so that you get this progression, but not the same ones. Lynn crawls in there, gets familiar with the bear, and stays. But he habituates those bears throughout the year, and I always have had an issue with that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's why.
Yeah, and so when I look at studies, if I see that Lynn Rogers hooked to a study, I take a little grain of salt with it because you don't know if you're getting true behavior. So
Awful for the bear.
no, well, and there's some issues up there with the site as well, but everybody has their different theory on how to study bears. He has put out some amazing research on bear vocalizations that no one else could have gotten without habituating those bears. But at what cost? So, Yeah, what costs the bear. Now, all those bears, he's got a large area. Those bears usually spend their almost their entire lives in that area. But some of the neighbors have been a little upset with him. Because they're so habituated to him, they come up to them as well. So, any case, whether you want to see a bear or not, it's best to try to take all those precautions. I know everybody wants to see it so bad, and so do I, but you got to think of the safety of the bear. You got to be the one that's just lucky enough for it to come through. We'll get you next.
I just wanted to ask one more. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I next? I'm sorry. What value do you see of the bears, like, in the ecosystem? You know, because, like, people get freaked out and they want to get rid of the bear, but I would imagine that would then, you know, what is their purpose in this ecosystem? I'm trying to find a reason to defend the bear again.
Yeah, I mean, bears are an important animal in the fact that they are, they eat a lot of things. They eat roadkills, they eat stuff that's, you know, they're a scavenger, they clean up some of that stuff. They are just a wonderful animal as a whole. They're a large predator. I mean, they do take out a lot of rodents, they take out, they do help with the deer population, that kind of thing. So they are, you know, you can't say, well, they're perfectly at this or perfectly at that. It's great to have them there. They are meant to be there in the system. They're a wonderful animal. And, you know, they can, because they can adapt so well to people, we can have them and enjoy them and them not be habituated and have this large animal close by to us that would be a wonderful thing to see that we can keep wild. So unlike some of the canids which habituate and become aggressive, bears tend to not become so aggressive, become more curious. But they still are an awesome animal, and they're a little bit smarter than some of the canids that you can, because you can haze them a little bit better. Canids tend to, even if you haze some of the canids, they still don't end up falling back off of their bad habits. Where the bears, if you haze them the right way, if you take away those attractants, you'll get to see them, and it's an awesome experience.
Is wind chimes a haze?
What's that?
Are wind chimes a haze?
Anything can be something that they're not used to hearing. So I always say, if you have a wind chime, have a wind chime. You know, it could be something that keeps them from coming into the area. So there's a wind chime right there.
So since we now have bobcats, coyotes, bear, how did those three interact with one another, and I guess the fisher cats as well?
Yeah. So most things back off of a bear. I've seen bears come in and takes, you know, if coyotes took down a deer, the bear will walk in and the coyotes are like, they run off, and the bear will eat the deer. We see that more with the grizzly bears being more aggressive than the black bears, but a mature male he'll keep that for himself. We don't see interaction between bobcats and bears almost at all, too. And really, we don't see a lot of overall interaction because bears are a diurnal species. They are a daytime species. They tend to sleep at night, and they tend to forage during the day. And even during the middle of the day, they like to go down and get in the water, climb up the top of a tall tree, spread out, and let the breeze blow over them. And they'll just be way up in the top of the canopy, and you won't ever notice them. They're just up in the trees. And so they do that. They love the midsummer. So you don't see a lot of movement in midsummer. We don't see them in July and August because they're kind of just chilling by a pool of water. And then they climb up, hang in the tree, go back down, chill in the pool of water, climb back up the tree. And they just do that all day long and stay cool. And then just after it turns dark or just before light, they go on the forage for about an hour or two. Until it comes to this time of year when it starts to cool down, or late August, the mass starts coming down, they start getting out there and they need to start building weight. And we see them put it back on. Right here, she's been waiting quite a while.
So some of the videos that were on Facebook, they had a growl that you heard from the bear that really sounded really scary. Like, you know, like you say your standard growl, like if it's a quiet bear walking around, but the growl of that bear sounds really very, very scary. Why?
I haven't heard it.
It's on one of the Facebook.
Yeah, I haven't heard the
like,
growl.
Why are they like? Do they just growl? Is it something that they're growling at? Is that a sign
they make,
that you need
they
to
make
get out of
lots
there?
of noises. They have amazing amount of vocalizations, growl is sometimes aggressive, sometimes just growl to growl. You know, they're smelling something,
Okay.
and so they growl at the smell. Your dog would do the same thing, smell something and bark, hear something and bark. It's for them is they don't growl because they don't have like a roar,
Okay.
or you know they have this like rumbly growl thing.
So you don't change your opinion of what you should do if they're growling at you.
No,
As if you're-
no, you're doing the same thing. If they're growling, you're still standing your ground. You're still yelling at them, because now when you hear them, they'll do a jaw snap and they'll be like they'll snap their jaw. That's a little bit of aggressive behavior. They'll stomp, that type of thing. A lot of that's a lot of mock stuff. That bear that day, she was just growling and chomping her mouth and snapping it and stomping her feet and charging it, and that was, didn't come at me. We had a situation in Indiana with bear the same way. They actually called out the entire SWAT team, and they were all standing in front of this house, and the bear had fields to the back, and there was a nature preserve on this side of the people. Well, the bear wanted to go over here. And I told him if he just made a pathway, he would have walked through, but they were he was kind of charging. And I'm like, well, how was he charging? He was running down and kind of running along us and then running back. I say he's looking for a weak point in the line is what he's looking for. He's looking for a space to go through so we can get to where the habitat is. Again, that escape path may sometimes be blocked. And that's what they're trying to get to. They want to go to the escape area. He felt threatened. He needed to get away. He didn't want to go to the open fields. Eventually, he came down and did that about 4 or 5 times and then went to the open fields and went out that way. But he didn't want to do that. But he never did attack them.
It's extremely important. We should not leave any food in a car. You should mention
You can
that.
lock your car.
The bear can take out the window very easily with her paw. That's from California. That's what my son witnessed.
Yeah, again, one that doesn't happen very often. If you lock the car, they're good at opening doors. Really good. I always recommend if you live in bear country, have a round doorknob on your house too. Don't give them the lever. You're just making it easier. But they will eventually get round ones open because now they're even like the bear food containers in the Adirondacks. They've had to redesign them because they've learned to twist them off. They learn. I mean, they're good at things like that. They're very dexterous. Opening doors is easy for them. Opening doors. Recommendation there is if you have some food in your car, if you're camping, I put the food in the car. I roll the windows up and I lock the doors. Most bears are not going to spend the amount of energy to get into the car to get that food. Some occasionally will. But the chances is much lower. We always say about what is the chance of something? There's a chance anything could happen, but your highest likelihood is you can put it in the car. As long as the door is locked, he's not getting inside, and he's going to rarely take time to break the window.
So you've been wonderful. You're educating all of us, and I had a question. You mentioned the police. So are our police here trained or being trained on not to go from 0 to 100 if there's a bear encounter? Or
We always, I will talk to anybody. It's best for them. There is protocols, there's management plans that they go through the state with. I work for a nonprofit, so if they want to bring me in to consult, I've done that for communities. But the biggest thing I think is each agency is going to take however steps they make. By having me here, that's a great step.
We're so happy.
Yeah, and that's a great step. Every police force, town, staff has different opinions on how to deal with things. I always try to give them as many options as possible. That Get Bear Smart website has a lot of stuff for communities, for town officials to use, to learn. But always they should make contact with the Department of Natural Resources, or in where I was, or the DEC here, and communicate. That's the biggest thing is communications on when you have a bear in the neighborhood, and then communicating to you guys. These are the steps to take. This is what you should and should not do, and just keeping everybody calm. I mean, the biggest thing when you have a bear in the area is just if you learn or educate yourself, it's a great thing to have. I mean, it's a great thing to see the bear come through and walk through a yard here and there. If we take the precautions, we take down the feeders, we take away those attractants, he'll eventually just move on.
what efforts are we making to educate the kids in the schools about this? Because they didn't see this and they might be out there alone. Are we educating them through the schools or otherwise?
Well, I mean, the hopes is that if you came and talked tonight, you can come and you can come in and
Taping
talk.
it too, they'll watch it.
As much as you can. We would love to see teachers here. We would love to see those things, educate themselves on what to do. Again, we're not really in bear country yet. We're on this fringe of this starting to occur. I mean, there's communities that have had bears for 40 years that aren't educating kids on what to do around a bear. You know, Whistler has had bears forever. It wasn't until 10 years ago when this woman showed up in town to start this site, or 20 years ago when she started the site, because they had just put a bear down in town, and she said, should we really be putting the bears down? Can we do stuff to make this better? And so there's, bears are everywhere now. I mean, we're talking Florida, into South Florida, we're talking in the suburbs of Patterson, New Jersey, into Connecticut, getting into the suburbs of Boston. Everybody is dealing with the same thing all the way around. We're dealing with it the same way that people in mid-Ohio are dealing with it, the same way they are in the suburbs of St. Louis. Bears are moving in, are starting to come in, and the idea there is to get you guys talk to your neighbors, tell them what you learned, point them to a website, give them some facts. Our parks to put up signs. If you go to Ward Pound Ridge, you see they've got bear signs put up about what to do. Getting some education. I've done training for all the county parks folks. I did that last year. So they already learned on it, and the county parks staff. So, those folks then can provide information to people. So that's big.
Do you report possible danger to the DEC conservation officer at the 845 number, or do you report it to your police department?
It depends on how much danger you feel. Your police, local police, have a lot of stuff to deal with. If he's on the porch and not at the house, but he's on the porch, I'd say call the conservation officer. He's going to tell you how far out he is. If he's too far out, call your local police. If he's in the neighborhood, he's good to have him. He's already been trained on exactly what to do. All these guys are out of the Region 3 office, which has a lot more bears than we have, and they're dealing with them all the time up there. And on the other side of the river, they have a lot more issues than we have in Rockland County and Orange County than we've had over here. So they're dealing with a lot of that stuff over there. So they may not be in the area. Have both numbers at hand. Know what you're going to do. Have a plan. Just like you do any emergency plan, what happens if a bear comes on the porch? Just kind of run that by the family. This is what we need to do. We have the number here, give it a quick call. The other person, your wife could be on the phone, you could be on one phone, your wife could be on the other phone. Calling the police, calling conservation officer. If both show up, just as well. Then you maybe make a contact, because then the officer can talk to the local police, provide a little education there, and they can communicate a little bit on what this bear has been doing. Because a lot of times those folks up there, if they don't get reports, they don't know what's going on. I've been trying to work with them to know we have bears in these areas here and there. Until I started working on this last year, some of the folks up at DC office didn't think there were any bears really down in this part of Westchester, because none of the sightings were being reported to them. So now we're communicating a little bit better, and I'm working with some real nice folks at DEC.
Thank you.
So bears kill people. So is anything that it's known about why those things have happened? And
so bears what people?
Kill people.
Kill people.
Yeah, and my question is, if it's known why those cases have happened, and if you reach the final step that the bear attacks you, what should you use? Because I have heard that you either lie dead and try to pretend that he already killed you, or she already killed you, or fight the bear.
Yes. So, black bear attacks are extremely rare. When we talk about a bear attack, it's almost always a more aggressive polar bears. We're talking in North America. In North America, there's 3 bear deaths a year. And that's grizzly, polar, and black. There's a lot of bears out there, and we have 3 occur. More die from bees, more die from sharks, everything like that than bears. typically what we've seen of those incidences are usually the hiker who stumbles across the grizzly with cubs, or who camps in an area that is right in the middle of territory and it's breeding period and they're aggressive, or it's late in the season, they're aggressive because the food's running out. But where we tend to be black bear incidences are almost seem like they're accidental. Bump into each other. The bear gets into the garage, guy closes the garage door, he walks into the garage, the bear's cornered, it attacks him because it's trying to get out of there and it's danger. You know, a bear is cornered then. That's usually what we see it. Usually it's an attack as opposed to death with black. Where we've seen a few of these is that camping, we see a bear come in, particularly a habituated bear who's been used to coming to campgrounds, and it'll reach into a tent and grab the first thing that's there. If your head's sticking out of the tent, we've seen a lot of where the bear will grab their head, you know, when going into the tent. And so that's been some of the other injuries that occur, or deaths occur that way. Usually it's because then they startled the bear and the bear clamped down, and then they caused a major wound that caused the death. There are almost always these weird things like that, as opposed to like just all out, just the bear just comes and attacks. We don't usually see that with black bears. It's extremely rare. But if you were to ever be attacked, you don't want to play dead with a black bear. They're too curious. They're going to play with you for like 2-4 hours, you know, and just roll you around, trying to figure things out. They're way too curious an animal, so you need to fight back with them. You're going to go for the nose, poke them in the eyes, you know, anywhere those sensitive places, you know, so if you hit them right in the nose, if you poke them right at their eyes, you know, grab the ears, that kind of thing. All those are really sensitive on a bear. They don't like that at all. They'll back off. Almost everyone that you have an injury occur, but they fought back, they hit one of those sensitive spots, and the bear was like, I've had enough.
Our house backs up to woods, and as far as we know, we've had 2 bear sightings in our backyard a year and a half ago and last week. And we're wondering, how do we know if we're near a den or an area there?
You're not really going to know if you're near a den unless you find the den. These bears have a large range, and whenever they're in that area, by usually late October, they find a den, they start to stay tighter to that den. So if you start seeing the bear in late October, then you can say, well, likely the den is close by. If you haven't seen it in the October period at all, it's usually further away. We've had the bear in Ward Pine Ridge in October. We've had him in there in November in that area. This bear likely dens somewhere in that area, and this is within his territory, my guess. In the area, I would say we probably maybe have 2 to 3 bears in northern Westchester County territory-wise.
Thank you
Any final
very much.
questions? Thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.